What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone's having a great day. Today, I'm excited because we are going to be installing the APR lowering springs for my Mark 8 GTI. Now, this is kind of the first step in the process of getting the car to look right. From the factory here, we got the stock 18s with factory springs, which it does have quite a bit of wheel gap here, about 3 fingers worth, and I think we have to lessen that a little bit. So those APR springs are going to help us do that. Also, we have wheels and tires going on in next week's video. So make sure, if you guys are watching this one right now, make sure you go like, subscribe, and stick around for the next week's video while we completely change the look of this GTI. Now, from the factory, the GTI honestly handles pretty darn good, but there is a little bit of body roll with the car from the factory, as to be expected, because they gotta balance comfort and performance. Here, with the APR springs, I think lowering the center of gravity a little bit, increasing the spring rate as they do, I think it's gonna make for a really nice driving experience on the back roads, increase handling, reduce body roll, all that fun stuff. Now, I did pick up some of these APR bump stops as well to complement the springs, as we are gonna be losing a little travel with the stock shocks, and those bump stops should help kind of cushion the ride a little bit as we hit some of the bigger bumps. So on the workbench here, we have the springs laid out in front of us here. I believe these are the fronts, these are the rears. I'm gonna obviously double check before we do the installation, but there was a couple other things that I have laid out here that we're gonna need. We're gonna need some triple square bits here, of course. Volkswagen loves to use those. We got our spring compressors over here, obviously the bump stops, some sockets, breaker bar, and I did go ahead and pick up some replacement hardware. So the first step is gonna be getting the car in the air, and then we're gonna have a fun time unbolting everything here and getting those stock struts out. I'm not really looking forward to the job, but I'm looking forward to the result at the very end. So first things first, let's jack the car up, get the wheels and tires off, and then we'll take a look and see what we have to do to get these springs installed. All right, now that we have the car up in the air and the wheels are off, I do want to show you where I placed the jack stands, because on the Mark 8, it seems like there's not a great place to put your jack and then also place a jack stand. So let me show you where I ended up putting them, and then hopefully it helps you out if you decide to do this job. Under the car here, you can see that I placed the jack stands on the aluminum subframe, and I was very careful about doing this to make sure that we're not, it's in a functional spot here that shouldn't slip out or anything like that. So this is where I ended up putting them. I hope that helps somebody out there. I also ended up putting another set under the lift points on the car, just as an added safety measure, just in case, something were to happen. With that out of the way, there is a lot of different methods to doing this install, it looks like, from my research. However, I think the easiest for me is gonna be actually removing the axle nut, or the axle bolt on this car, and then we can get our strut spreader tool in here, remove the bolt and nut that secures the little spindle or the knuckle to the actual shock body. We'll have to remove the sway bar end link from the top here, and then we might have to remove this little bracket here holding the brake line. I'm sure we will, which is just one little bolt there. And we have 3 bolts under here that we're gonna actually have to remove as well, so this control arm can move up and down. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll test out the impact here on the axle nut. Hopefully Rigid's got my back on this, so we'll see. Boom, there it is. Before I get too far ahead of myself here, we also need to remove the headlight leveling sensors here, the little bracket that connects to the control arms. This is on the driver's side, and we don't want to remove that strut and break this off, because I hear these are pretty expensive. So we gotta actually just remove a couple little push clips here and get this plastic piece off of the control arm, which of course I can't see, but there we go. And it's just a little tiny bolt right here, a little nut. It's not on there very tight, which is nice. Bend that out of the way. Now we don't gotta worry about that as much. I'm gonna try the OE kinda or normal style of strut spreader tool. Should be spread. There we go. We're already loosening up. Yep, I think we got it. Oh, guys, we did it. The strut is out of the knuckle, and I have one bolt on the bottom there in the control arm holding this whole thing on top of that arm, so there's no stress on the brake lines or sensors. I did remove this little piece from the back wall there. And now we can go just take off the couple bolts on the top and the whole strut will come out. All right, guys, now that we have the strut out of the car here, we can start working on compressing the spring, and then it's gonna be a 21 millimeter nut on the top. Now, when we go and install the new spring in just a second, I did end up picking up one of these, which is a socket that's basically has this slit cut into it or half of it removed. So when you go to torque this 21 millimeter at the end of the day, when you're reinstalling these, you can fit your Allen key on the side and then torque it down. So this is something you're gonna wanna pick up. We're gonna work on putting the spring compressors on, getting these compressed, and then putting on the new APR springs. I'm excited. We're moving along now. All right, so we got the new ones here now, these APRs. We're gonna install these with the APR text facing up on the strut. And so we have the bump stops here as well. This is the factory bump stop. And then this is the shorter version from APR. But we're gonna put that right into the factory location again, just like OEM. And then we'll put this boot back on. Little notch on both of these that we're gonna line up. Get that kind of in the middle. It's also on a little bit of an angle here. And then you'll just rotate this into place. The rest of the assembly over the top. And I'll just put a little pressure on it and I should be able to get the nut screwed on the top, just for a few threads. Here, we are going to be torquing up the top nut. You could do this inside the car as well, which is probably easier. However, on the driver's side, you'd have to remove the windshield wiper to get the plastic piece up enough to fit the socket in there. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of doing all that, we're gonna use our little 7 millimeter Allen. We have our special strut nut tool here. We got the torque wrench set. 60 Newton meters is the torque on the top nut here. And then I tried it. I tried being a crazy guy here and holding this. No way I could do it, so we're using a little bar here to help extend that torque and get some leverage on this. So we're gonna do that now. I did throw a little rag over the top just in case we crack this thing, hence the safety glasses. Guys, be safe when you're doing this stuff. And yeah, we'll get this done and then it's back in the car. And that's it. Oh yeah, one last thing. When you're putting this strut back in, you're gonna see a little notch on the top of this rubber piece here. That notch goes towards the body of the car. So it's gonna go like, here's the notch, it's gonna go like this, and vice versa on the other side. So make sure you do this. That orientates everything correctly, all right? Now onto the time lapse. Reinstalling the strut was pretty simple, but trying to position the knuckle assembly while lining up the axle was not fun. It's pretty heavy. One tip I can give is to use a jack to lift the assembly into position, but try to jack from the end of the control arm where the ball joint is located instead of the rotor. This will give you a much better angle and make aligning the strut much easier. New bolt going in. Okay, now the super fun part in the front. The car is on the ground now, as you can see. I left the center caps off so we can torque the axle bolts. It's 200 Newton meters plus a 180-degree turn. These are bolts that I replaced because I don't want to mess with that much torque and risk snapping this off. So I got my big torque wrench out here. Let's see if we can get the torque on it. All right, so that's 200 Newton meters right there. Well, after torquing this thing to 200 Newton meters and then trying my best with the breaker bar, I was able to get about 90 degrees extra out of that axle nut, not the full 180. I think you're gonna have to use a really, really big breaker bar to get that 180 degrees. So hopefully it's good. If it's not for whatever reason, I'll update you guys in another video or the video description. And we might have to go get a longer bar. But yeah, that is a chore, trying to get that extra 180 out of there. That has to be well into the 300 Newton meter torque rating there, which is, that's a lot. Well, would you look at that? It's light outside again. It's almost like it's a whole nother day. It is. We started this whole project last weekend, and this is what happens when we don't have enough time to finish a project, and I think I have enough time, and I don't. So we carried this through last weekend for a few hours each day, which was not enough time. And then we, hit up some shots during the week to finish up the front end in the kind of dark here in the garage. And now we are tackling the rear, which should be much easier. But as you see, we got the rear jacked up in the air here. I ended up using the front 2 jack points, which inevitably raises the rear as well. Put a jack stand under one side in the rear, then went over to the other side, jacked up the front on that side, and it rose the opposite side in the rear, where we were able to place our other jack stand. Of course, remove the wheels and tires, and now we can get on to actually installing the rear springs. So let's head under the car right now and finish this baby up. All right, under the car now, we got 2 little 10mm bolts that we have to remove for this little splash guard or aerodynamics thing, piece of plastic that we have to get out of here. So these are just 2 little 10mm, and it's probably good to have a battery connected to your, hang on one second. There we go. I'm an idiot. Electricity is always good to have. We got the sway bar end link. All right, now we're on to the shock bolt here. So it's an 18mm on the bolt on the other side, 18mm on this side on the nut, and then we'll just lock that loose. Done. And we just got the last one holding the control arm in. This is obviously where you're gonna wanna have your jack placed under here, because this spring is still under load and it's gonna try to drive the whole assembly down. You wanna be able to release that tension slowly with your jack. So make sure that is under the control arm here, and it's taking a little bit of the force. Once we take this bolt out, we'll lower the whole thing down, and then we should be able to pull the spring out, put the other one in. There we go. Now with the bolt out, we can just lower down that control arm, and that'll allow us to remove the spring. There we go. And before we can remove the actual shock here, we have to take off these little T25 fasteners all around the inside of the fender liner so we can get access to the strut mount up here. Looks like there's a bunch of them. Again, that's just a T25, and then we'll buzz those off real quick. So with the liner out, it looks like we're gonna have to remove this bolt here to kind of bend this back so you can get access to the actual strut mount or shock mount bolts here in the back. So yeah, a little bit more, but we'll see if taking this one out allows us to kind of flex this forward and get that one. After removing that bolt, we were able to get access to the shock mount bolts easily, and yep, you guessed it, back to the bench to remove the mount from the shock and swap out those bump stops. Once the bump stops were in, we were able to reinstall the shock on the car and made sure to torque the mount bolts to spec. This is 50 Newton meters plus a 45-degree turn. All right, it's finally time. We're putting in the new springs, the new APR springs. Looks like text is gonna be facing up, and we moved over the isolator from the stock spring to this one here. Just make sure it's lined up in the same position as it was, and when you pulled it out, you'll be good to go. After spending some time getting everything realigned, we were able to get everything loosely put back together. Now it's time to torque it to spec, and then we are finished. Now that the springs are installed, we can go and torque everything up here. So this is gonna be 70 Newton meters plus 180 degrees. Same thing for this one, 70 Newton meters plus 180. And then this one, I'll put on screen right now. I believe it's 20 Newton meters plus 180 degrees. I'll put it up there right now. All right, guys, the installation of the APR springs is done. We are officially finished with this project. The rears, I think, need a little time to settle in yet. The fronts look a little bit lower than the rears right now, but you can see it did drop a little bit from the factory height. I think in the next day or two before our appointment for the new wheels and tires, I think it's gonna settle in a little bit more here. But overall, guys, it was definitely a little bit of work for sure, especially one person, but it is doable. And I think overall, this is gonna be like one of the best overall mods for this car, just because of the increased in handling that we should gain from this. So be pretty cool. I'm gonna check back in with you guys in the next video when we go over the wheels and tires and all that fun stuff. And then we will see how the springs react on some windy roads. So until then, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful for you guys. And we'll catch you in the next one. You guys have a great day. Bye.